The average price of a gallon of regular gas just hit $3.95 in Minnesota and $4.11 nationwide. The price of diesel fuel is at $4.76 per gallon. The price of crude oil recently hit an unbelievable $145 per barrel. And there just seems to be no relief in sight. Prices have gone up more than $1 per gallon over the last 6 months. Now, everyone knows that demand hasn't gone up 25% over the last 6 months, but the prices have gone up $1 per gallon over the last 6 months. This increase is astonishing, and even more astonishing is the fact that the administration has continued to do nothing about the speculation issue, continues to do nothing to push the CFTC to use the tools that it has and to push for more tools to do something about the excessive speculation that is going on in this market. We cannot continue to do business as usual, Mr. President. I've heard from people in Minnesota who have canceled their trips up to their cabins because they simply can't afford to fill up their car with gas anymore. They've canceled their summer vacations. And these aren't glamorous summer vacations. These are little cabins up in lakes in Minnesota. I've heard from farmers who are having a hard time making ends meet, even in spite of the high commodity prices, because the cost of their inputs, diesel fuel for farm equipment and fertilizer made from natural gas, have spiraled out of control. I've heard from the CEO of Northwest Airlines, based in Minnesota, about how the speculation in the oil market has so greatly contributed to their costs and made it very difficult for them to continue business as usual, with prices going up, grounding flights, not having as many flights, leading to more delay in the summer because if a passenger misses a flight, we just had a hearing on this in the Commerce Committee, there's not much backup flights because there aren't just as many flights. The list goes on. The high price of energy has inflated the price of everything from groceries to transportation to home heating. It has impacted every sector of our economy, from manufacturing to forestry to farms and small businesses. Middle-class families are already struggling, as you know, Mr. President, with the high cost of health care and college education. And we know we need to do things about that, but we keep getting blocked, and we're very hopeful that with a new president, we're going to be able to get things done for the middle class. But for now, we have people in my state that simply can't afford the price of gas when you couple it with everything else that's been going on in their lives. We know the statistics. We know what's been happening, where the average family in just the last 8 years, their wages have gone down about $1,000 a year, but their expenses have gone up about $4,000. So that's a net loss of $5,000 a year to them. Many of the people in my state, and I know you know this, Mr. Presiding Officer, in Colorado, many of the people in my state are in rural areas, and they really can't have access to public transportation. They don't have a choice in how much they drive. They have to get to work, they have to get to the grocery store, they have to get to the doctor, and any pay increase they have gotten in the last year, if they've even gotten one, has been eaten up by the cost of gas. And more often than not, I will tell you, there haven't been a pay increase. But yet, as recently as February of this year, the president seemed taken aback when someone asked him about $4 gas. He said, and I quote, "You're predicting $4 a gallon gasoline. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that." The fact is that this administration has failed to provide Americans with a meaningful energy policy that would provide relief from high gas and energy prices. They saw this coming, they saw what was going on in these international markets, but they failed to act. This country needs a bold energy policy for the future, a policy that will stabilize prices and give consumers more alternatives, reduce our dependence on foreign oil, and provide us with the next generation of homegrown biofuels. In short, I believe we have to invest in the people, the farmers and the workers, from my perspective, of the Midwest, not the oil cartels of the Mideast. And the same could be said of any area of this country. This country spends $600,000 every minute on imported oil. That money leaves the pockets of American drivers going overseas and contributes to our enormous trade deficit. It amounts to a tax on the family and businesses of this country, and it undermines our national security. Well, why does it affect our national security? Well, that's because America has roughly 3% of the world's proven crude oil reserves, but we are responsible for about 25% of the world's oil consumption. Now, we know we can't continue on this path without becoming more and more vulnerable to other parts of the world, some of which are politically unstable, some of which we didn't want to do business with, some of which we don't want to do business with. But there is another way. You look at what's going on in Brazil. They've achieved energy security. They've done it with a combination of biofuels. Now, they've got sugarcane, so it's easier, but we've got all kinds of things, Mr. President. We've got all kinds of things. Switchgrass, prairie grass hasn't even been developed. Other parts of the corn, we know we can't do it all with corn. We're talking about algae. We're talking about biofuels. We're talking about residue from logging. There's all kinds of possibilities. But Brazil was able to do it with a combination of sugarcane and domestic production and a government policy that drove them to energy independence. We need to put together a forward-looking energy policy with the same sense of urgency that we had 40 years ago when we put a man on the moon. In the long term, this is going to mean strategic investment, putting those standards in place so people will push to buy the hybrid cars, electric cars, new solar technologies, cellulosic, ethanol, other forms of energy from biomass. We need to have better fuel efficiency standards for our cars and trucks, and I'm proud that the Senate, on a bipartisan basis, for the first time since I was in junior high school, increased the gas mileage standards on cars by 10 miles per gallon. But there's so much more we can do. We need a renewable electricity standard. We need to look at other sources, as I said, solar. We need to do more with nuclear. We need to do more to increase responsibly our domestic production. And we need to have functioning refineries. These are long-term solutions, and I believe very strongly that they are important and we need to get them done. But there is also something that we can do in the short term about high gas prices that will bring immediate relief, and that is to address the role that market speculation is playing in driving up our energy prices. The administration likes to tell us that these high gas prices are just a simple case of supply and demand. More people are driving, so the price of gas goes up. Well, for no one thing, we know that's not true in our country. Less people are driving. We know there's been some increases internationally, but when expert on this, Mr. Yergin, testified before our committee, there's been sort of a leveling off in terms of demand for world oil. But whatever it is, we know that even if there has been an increased demand, it hasn't been 25% like we've seen, $1 a gallon increase in just the last 6 months. The answer that it's just supply and demand just doesn't hold true any longer. Listen to what the oil executives have to say in this matter. On October 30th, 2007, the CEO of Marathon Oil said $100 oil isn't justified by the physical demand in the market. On April 11th of this year, the CEO of Royal Dutch Shell said the oil fundamentals are no problem. They're the same as they were when oil was selling for $60 a barrel. And on April 1st, a senior vice president of ExxonMobil testified before the House, and he said that the price of oil should be about $50 to $55 per barrel. Well, if oil should be roughly $50 to $60 a barrel, given market fundamentals, as we heard from our oil executives, why is it trading so high? Why is it trading at over $100 a barrel? If supply and demand, which should be the market forces which determine price, don't explain the high price of gas, what does? According to the experts, there is a frenzy of unregulated market speculation in the oil futures market that is driving prices up to record highs. I'd like to share a quote from an energy market analyst with Oppenheimer and Company, who was recently named by Bloomberg as the top-ranked energy analyst in the country. This is what he said. He said, "I'm absolutely convinced that oil prices shouldn't be a dime above $55 a barrel. Oil speculators include the largest financial institutions in the world," he said. "I call it the world's largest gaming hall. It's open 24/7. It's totally unregulated. This is like a highway with no caps and no speed limit, and everybody's going 120 miles per hour."